Hello everyone, I'm Suleiman and in this video I will explain you Spring Boot and will create APIs like registration API and authentication API with the help of Spring Boot. So without wasting much of the time, let's go and create a Spring Boot application, and for which I am going to use this start.spring.io. Basically this portal is used for creating Spring Boot applications. So some of the default settings I'm going to change here. First one is this project type. I'm going to make it as Maven project. Language I'll choose as Java, and then the default version I'll keep it as 3.1.3 for Spring Boot. And this I will change to org.suleiman.tutorials. Okay, and then here I'm going to create this application as sample Spring app or Spring Boot app. Okay, and then here I'm going to just change it to app. That's my package name. You can change it the way you want. And the dependencies that I will be adding is first of all a web dependency, because I'm creating the REST API, and I will add a Lombok dependency because I don't want to create multiple. I just want to create POJOs, but I don't want to add a lot of code into it. So Lombok will help reduce the boilerplate code. And then I will also be adding this DevTools dependency. This DevTool dependency provides fast application restarts, live reload, and configuration for enhanced development experience. So I will generate this project, and that is downloaded. I will extract this, and then I will open this project into Eclipse. And for this I will use this option import projects, and because it's a Maven project I will select this existing Maven projects into my workspace, and I will paste that path which I copied. It's showing that pom.xml, and I'll click finish, and you'll see that application is there in my workspace, and that is the structure of my application. It's a org.suleiman.tutorials.app is a package that we selected, and there is the name of the class, which is an entry point of your application, which is annotated with @Spring Boot application. We're not going into the details of the Spring Boot annotations and so on. So in this video, our goal is to create simple APIs which we can easily call, and then in the later videos that those APIs we can consume into REST or React applications or Angular applications. So Spring Boot is mostly used for creating REST APIs. So I'm going to create a controller class, and I'll call it as controllers, and in this I'm going to name it as user controller. I'll click on finish. That's my controller, but this control class I will annotate with the rest controller, and I'm also going to give the request mapping annotation for mapping the path. So slash API slash v1 version 1, and then for the respective methods for respective APIs I will be adding a different URL. So before I jump into creating those APIs, I will also create the POJO classes, which I will be using for the communication purpose between the client and server. So I'll call them as POJOs, and here is going to be my request model, and I'm also going to create one more class, that is a response model. All right, request model and response model. So this request model is going to be having this property object request. I'll tell you why this class we are creating. Okay, And then here I will annotate this with @no org constructor. This basically is a Lombok annotation which will provide the no default constructor in your request model class. If also need a constructor with all the parameters, I can use this annotation all are constructor, and @data annotation will provide the get set methods, and @toString will also provide the toString method into your class. All right. In similar way, I'm also going to do the same things at the rate, but before that, let me add this property private object response, private integer status code, and private string status. Okay, and then here I'm going to again add no argument constructor, then I will add all our constructor, then add the data, and add the toString method. Though this toString method is not required, but let's add it. And as you see, when I'm adding these annotations right here, you also see in the outline view the default constructor. Let me just remove this and let me show you what will happen if I remove it. So save it, and you see that default constructor is not showing anymore here because we are not adding the default constructor. Alright, so now these are my model classes. I'm going to use this into my APIs. Alright, so my first API is going to be for the registration. Alright, and then here what I'll do is I'll say public, and response model is the return type of this response model, and let me say register user is the name of the method. And here this is going to be my post API, so I'm going to use post mapping annotation, and the URL that I'll be using is register hyphen user. All right, and this API will also accept that registration or user object. It will also accept user object, but I'm not going to accept it as a user object. Instead, I'm going to accept this as a request model. Okay, request model, and then in this I will annotate this as @request body. All right, and then for now I'm going to return null. Okay, so let us understand. So what is this? So first of all, we created a user controller, annotated this with @rest controller, and request mapping is /API/v1, and then we have added an API method which is a register user method. The return type is the response model that we created. So this is our customized response that we are going to send it to the client, and then we are going to accept it as request model, in which we are not going to accept the user details. We are going to accept user details, but not as just user object, instead a request model. But I will also need the user properties, right? So I need the first name, last name, email, whatever properties that user may have. So for that, I'm going to create a user class or user info, whatever you want to create. I will call it as user info. And in this, I'm going to add private string first name, private string last name. I'm going to make this video very simple, so I'm not going to add many things in it. And then private string password. So these are the only things that I will add. And here I will put this again as no argument constructor, all are constructor, and then add the data, and if needed I will also add toString method into it. All right, that's my user class. And then so what we did, we have generalized this, means any API you create will always accept this request model. So I would have created like user info also here, but what will happen with that is it will accept only user info. So if somebody's going to send some other information, that will not be possible with that. All right, Okay, so let's not make this complicated one. So let me just say what I'll do now is, okay, so I'm going to do it without my database. So first of all, let me create a service. So I will write service and I'll call this as dot services, and in which I'm going to say user service. I will add two methods in it. Public okay, user info. Add user info is a method which accepts user info object, and then one more is public user info um, get user info, but this will accept user object itself, but this is used for the authentication purpose. This method we are going to use it for authentication purpose. All right. Because I'm not going to use database, in the subsequent videos we will see how this can be converted to a database based application, but for now I will provide the implementation using collection. So user service IMPL. All right, and this service I will annotate with @ service annotation. It will make it as a service, and then I'm going to implement those two methods. Implements user service. So I need to provide add user info, and then also need to provide get user info. But for this I will you be using a map, and it is a string as a key. I'm going to use that email as a key and value as user info, and users is equal to new hash map. So it's a very basic application. Okay, that's why I'm creating the object here. Otherwise you would have created it as a, or let me also do it this way, public static, because it will be only one copy for the entire application. All right, so now the implementation is going to be very simple. I will make it as if this dot, not this dot, if users dot contains key user info dot get email, I'm going to return null, else I'm going to add it users dot put user info dot get email as the key, and then the value is an object, and then I will return that user info object which I am receiving from as a parameter. So that is the implementation. That is a very simple implementation of my add user method. And similar way, I'm also going to add this code here. So if users dot contains key user info dot get email, I'm checking if this key already exists, then I will get that object. So user info is equal to users dot get user info, sorry, user info dot get email. By that key I'm going to find that user info, and I'm going to return this, return user info. A very simple implementation that I am providing here. Otherwise I'm going to provide null. So that's my service class. So now let me inject this service into my controller. So private user service, we will always be using interfaces whenever that we want to inject any dependency. That's how you create your loosely coupled applications. I'm using auto add annotation for injecting that service. Okay, and here what I'll be doing is let me create user info. User info is equal to service dot add user info, and from that request model I will extract requests that is of type, that is going to be of type user info. Okay, from because that we have created it as an object out of type object, I'm going to extract it as user info, and then I will be returning new response model of type user info. Status code is 200, and then here I'm going to status as okay. All right, so very simple one, not many fancy things in it. It's a very simple one. Similar way, I am going to be creating one more. So response model, um, authenticate user. Now many a time what people do is they write it as a get API because you are fetching it, but remember it's a form that user fills and submit the details, so that's where it has to be a post method. So request body, and again I'm going to take this as request model, request model, and this is going to be my post mapping and slash authenticate hyphen user. And here what I will do simply, okay, let me do that again. User info is equal to service dot get user info, and similar thing again. So request model dot get request, and then again I have to typecast because it is of type object, and get user info accepts user info object. And then similar way I am going to copy this and paste so that I can save my video time. That's it. My APIs are ready. Here you see uh, the method, and yeah, so let me run this and show you how this will work. So for running this application I will be going to this Spring Boot application class, and then I will run it as a Java application. And let's observe the console. If everything is all well, what you will see the status message here as started Spring Boot application, and the context path is empty. As of now we have not given any context path. The default port on which the Tomcat runs, the embedded Tomcat runs, is 8080. You can change it from your application.properties file. From this file you can change. Okay, all done. So now let me open my Postman, and I will call these APIs. So first of all I will add a new user, and then later I will retrieve that. So my API is a post API, and URL would be http://localhost 8080. Remember is the port on which your Tomcat is running, and this is the top level request mapping that we specified, and then register hyphen user is a URL that we mapped with that API register user, right? And it is accepting the request model. If you see, the request model is of type object and it has a request property, so it is a JSON object which accepts the requests. Remember, now very important, the most critical part here, I'm going to pass it as a JSON object. So I'll choose this raw type, and then from here I'll select JSON, and here I will construct my JSON object. Remember, it is accepting only the request and is of type object. make sure to put the double quotes here. And this is the object. So first name, sorry, I will have to put this in double quotes again. First, you will have to make sure that your property names are matching here. So I'll say Sachin, again last name Gupta, email sachin.gupta@gmail.com, and lastly password. I say password 123. So that's my request object. And let's hit now and see what response that we get. And you see there's a problem. Okay, what it says that it is not able to cast. Okay, so linked hash map cannot be cast to user info object. Let me go to Eclipse and find out what is the root cause of this. Okay, so it's saying class cast exception somewhere, I think. Okay, user info linked hash map, where I'm using linked hash map, by the way. Okay, let me, okay, request model. So that's my request model. Request model dot, so it's an object. Get request. Okay, let me check this. Let me check. Sachin Gupta is there, and this is an object that we have. It's a request. Is of type object. Last name, last name. It has linked hash map. Okay. What's the user info? Okay. Think we'll have to make use of the object mapper class. Okay, let me try that out here. Okay, so request model dot get request, and then changing it to the name of our class is user info class dot class. All right, and let's user info, and this I will pass. Okay, let me pass that here. Okay, let's check now. See now, because of the dev tools, it has already restarted the application. Again, it has deployed. Let's try again. And now you see you have got this working, right? But ideally, you should not create this object mapper in every controller method. Instead of that, what I will be doing is, let me add this object mapper here, private object mapper, okay, and then I will auto wired, and then I'll create this as a bin here, public object mapper, and then return new object mapper, so that it's easy. Okay, and then I'll add this as a bin annotation. So this is a good design, I would say. Otherwise, every time you call that register method, creates a new object of object mapper. Let's test it out again. Is it all fine? Okay, let's test it again. Ramesh and Ramesh. All right, let me test it out. And I'm getting that. So 200 OK response I'm getting. Let me also try now the authentication part. So again, it's going to be a post request. But for that, again, I will have to make these changes here in my service. So I'll directly write here mapper dot convert value. Okay, so request model dot get request and comma user info dot class. Okay, let's test that also. So post request http colon slash slash localhost colon 8080 slash API slash v1 slash authenticate hyphen user, and again from the body I will pass a JSON object, but let me copy this because I don't want to type it again, but this time I will only pass these two. Oh, I'm getting null. It's working, by the way, it's working, but I'm getting null. Somewhere the implementation is not right. So it's a 200 get request convert value. Somewhere the implementation has gone wrong. Get email. Let me check this also. Okay, somewhere this has gone wrong. 200 user info. Why user info is null? We are getting, by the way, the response, but somehow. Okay. Let me just post it first. I think we restarted. Okay, let me run it again. Okay, done. And then, yeah, the problem was we made the changes into Gate API, and then because we made the changes, the application restarted, and that's where this map had had gone null. That was the issue. So now both of our APIs are working the way we are expecting, and see how simple it is. So right now it is with the help of collection, that is map, but in the subsequent videos I may try to convert this application to a database based application. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and share this video. Thank you.